Only after I died did I realize that the little delinquent girl, Jessica, was the female lead of this world. She fell in love with my childhood friend at first sight, and never stopped chasing him. In the end, that aloof, untouchable flower on a high mountain was dragged down into the dust and turned into a love-obsessed fool willing to live and die for romance. Chapter 1. After coming back to life, I finally understood this world was a sweet romance novel. Jessica was the heroine, and my cold, elegant childhood friend Diego was the male lead. Their messy entanglement, the wild bad girl and the stoic honor student, made readers swoon and scream. I love this couple. According to the author's description, Jessica was a fiery, daring, cat-like girl who loved and hated openly. She was the one who made even the heart of the icy, distant Diego melt. And me? I was nothing more than their catalyst, the short-lived childhood friend who died early. Barely even qualified as a villainess, Jessica, the rebellious girl who barely scraped through school, always said to me coldly, "Cecilia, what are you so proud of? You're only better than me because you were born luckier. If I wanted to study, you'd never beat me." To her, my reminders to Diego, to stay away from her crowd, were proof that I looked down on her. Because of Jessica, Diego decided I was narrow-minded. He drifted further and further away from me. When I realized I couldn't change the mind of a boy already in love, I stopped trying. But fate has its cruel sense of humor. Maybe Jessica saw me as her rival. Maybe my existence interfered too much with her love story. Or maybe I was simply meant to be her stepping stone. On the night before the college entrance exam, I died in a dark alley. It rained heavily that night, washing away all traces. By morning, they found my body. I was 18, in the prime of youth, and suddenly gone. The news spread everywhere. People pitied me. A flower withered too soon. No one knew that Jessica caused my death, because she had offended some thugs near the school. They cornered her in an alley that night. When she saw me passing by, she called out to me sweetly, as if we were close friends. She used me as a distraction to escape. Before running, she looked at me with fake guilt and said, "Wait here, I'll go get help." But she never came back. Just like the thugs said, she never showed up again. They turned on me next, hands grabbing, mouths spewing filth. In the struggle, I fell backward, my head slamming against a stone step. Blood spilled everywhere. The boys panicked and fled, and I fell asleep forever, never to wake again. Chapter 2. After I died, I became a ghost. I watched my mother faint from grief at my funeral. I watched Jessica, escorted by my brother, standing before my tombstone, saying she was sorry, begging for forgiveness for her cowardice. Because of my death, Jessica found redemption. She decided to start over. She wiped off her heavy makeup, erased the red spider lily tattoo on her shoulder, dyed her blue hair a soft chestnut, and cut ties with her rebellious friends. Like that, Jessica, the reformed bad girl, became the new goddess of the campus. Under Diego's tutoring, she began studying hard, and as always, the universe favored her. In just 1 year, she went from last place in the grade to the top 5. Everyone admired her, in her shining heroine's aura. My death was quietly forgotten, what others studied for 12 years to achieve. Jessica gained effortlessly. After the college exams, she followed Diego to the same elite university. They became the perfect model couple, the genius pair. My parents, haunted by grief, moved away to another city, returning only on my death anniversary. Out of guilt, Jessica sent them expensive gifts every year, through Diego. Of course, as if that could balance the weight of a life. When Diego graduated, those thugs were finally caught, and the truth of my death came to light. He couldn't accept what Jessica had done, but he couldn't bring himself to leave her either. Around that time, my brother Noah, who had unknowingly fallen for Jessica too, found out the truth. Unable to bear it, he accepted an overseas assignment and left the country. At the university, when Diego finally began to pull away, Jessica threw herself into his arms and cried, "I know it was my fault, but I was terrified, and after I ran, I tripped, hit my head, and passed out. When I woke up, Cecilia was already dead. I asked those guys about it later. They said if she hadn't tried to call the police, she wouldn't have died. Just like that. She shifted all the blame to me, and no one questioned her. After all, the dead don't speak. My parents tried to demand justice, but Jessica had been acknowledged by her wealthy biological father. And with Diego defending her, my parents were powerless. They eventually left the campus, two frail figures swallowed by the wind. In the end, Jessica became the cherished daughter of a rich family. She married Diego while still in college. Pregnant with twins, she took over her father's company, became a powerful businesswoman, and lived happily ever after. A perfect, glowing heroine. Even my brother forgave her. Every year, he sent gifts to her and her children. My death? To them, it was just a tragic footnote, a turning point in their love story, a stepping stone for their happy ending. Only my parents still remembered. Only they mourned. Everyone else moved on. Chapter 3. I was reborn carrying resentment. Back to the moment when Jessica first fell in love with Diego. Diego, wanna hang out after class? I'll take you somewhere fun. Jessica swaggered into the classroom, plopped right down on Diego's desk, her legs swinging freely. She had modified her school uniform, tighter, shorter, and every time she moved, her midriff peeked out. No thanks. I'm going to the library with Cecilia to look up some materials. Diego barely looked at her, his gaze flicking to her waist with a faint frown. So that was him back then, the future cold prince already taking shape. And me, foolish enough to think my childhood friendship entitled me to advise him on how to live. What a busybody I'd been. Jessica looked me up and down, then let out a teasing whistle. So she's your type, huh? What if I tried looking like her? Her words made every student still in the room glance at us, eyes gleaming with gossip, as if Diego and I really had something going on, perhaps to stop her from getting the wrong idea. Diego caught her wrist and said seriously, Jessica, don't say nonsense. Fine. She pouted dramatically, pretending to be heartbroken. With just a few words, Jessica had made the stoic Diego's expression change. Those two really were made for each other. She could flirt all she wanted, but she shouldn't have dragged me into it. I kicked my chair aside, grabbed a book from Diego's desk, and hurled it at her. I used to think you were just rude, but now I see you're shameless. Some things can't be joked about. You could get publicly reprimanded for that. If you want to flirt, do it openly. Don't act innocent. And don't drag me down with you, you disgrace. Ignoring Jessica's darkening face, I grabbed my bag and walked out. That evening, I begged my mother to install a security camera outside our house. Even in my previous life, I'd always sensed Jessica's hostility toward me, an invisible force that simply clashed with mine. She didn't like me, and I never liked her either. She had turned Diego against me, gotten cozy with my brother Noah, and sent her friends to smash our windows. Because of her, my parents once suspected I had fallen in with bad company. Fine. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd play along. Let's see how heaven's favorite daughter liked a fair fight. Chapter 4. Just as I expected, Jessica's tantrum brought trouble. Her gang of delinquent girls started hanging around my neighborhood, vandalizing everything they could. The moment my security camera caught them, throwing rocks at our windows, I called the police. They had injured my mother, and since they were all over 16, they faced criminal charges. Soon after, several of them were sentenced to detention. Jessica went berserk. She showed up downstairs screaming my name. Cecilia, come out here. You think you can mess with me? Cecilia, Diego's mother said nervously, peeking through the window. That girl looks dangerous. Don't go down, sweetie. I couldn't tell her the truth, that her precious son was the one Jessica was chasing, and that one day Jessica would become her daughter-in-law. In my previous life, Diego had been a devoted husband, so much that after Jessica's fights with his parents, he had moved away and never came back, leaving his aging parents alone, with nothing but a monthly allowance and loneliness. He became Jessica's husband and her servant. I promise I won't go down, Auntie. I told her softly. By the way, how's Diego lately? He's fine, just smiling a lot these days. It's odd. Is something going on? I shook my head. Nothing. Just asking. He doesn't walk home with me anymore. That's all. Who would have thought that my 10 years of friendship with Diego meant less than the 2 months he'd known Jessica? Downstairs, when Jessica realized I wasn't coming out, she kicked the wall hard, then limped away, a ridiculous sight. Chapter 5. Eventually, Diego's mother found out. According to my mom, she had gone into Diego's room and discovered a perfume-scented girl's jacket and a delicately wrapped bracelet box. That bracelet, Diego had scrimped and saved to buy it for Jessica's birthday. And even years later, when Jessica became a millionaire, she still wore it. The faded symbol of their pure love. You'd better not start dating early, young lady. My mother scolded, tugging my ear. Study hard. Your father nearly lost it last night worrying about you. Your aunt cried all night. That boy's behavior broke her heart. Diego, the once well-behaved boy, had argued with his parents for Jessica's sake. He'd even shouted at them. We used to think he was just shy. My mom sighed. Now we see he just picks and chooses who to be kind to. All for that girl. We don't understand what's gotten into him. She didn't know yet that my brother Noah would one day fall for Jessica too, and forgive her for everything. 2 brothers in arms, both enslaved by love. Mom, I asked innocently, do you know who the girl is? No, he refuses to say. Your aunt plans to ask the school tomorrow. I nodded, staying silent. Because of Jessica, Diego became defiant. He wanted everyone to know how wonderful she was. Cecilia, can you please talk to my parents? He begged. They adore you. Help them understand Jessica. She doesn't deserve their hatred. I said nothing. I could help anyone, except her. I would never forget how she let me die. Cecilia, Diego pressed. Jessica said she didn't know her friends would attack your house. They're in detention now, let it go. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated, his obsession plain. I took a slow breath. Diego, I'm curious, why do you like her so much? Because when I'm with her, I'm happy, he said softly. She's light, carefree. I've never felt that before. Only she makes me feel that way. Jessica's not what you think, she just acts out because she's unloved. He smiled gently as he said her name. I blinked, then said sweetly, oh, I see. But what if I just don't want to help her? And before he could answer, I shoved him toward the door. Because I hate her. Diego, I despise her. What is she? Some kind of goddess everyone must worship? Your mom's right, she's a useless brat. And you? Who are you to lecture me? I slammed the door in his face. From that moment on, our friendship ended for good. Chapter 6. During the National Day break, Noah came back, saying he was meeting an online friend. In my last life I didn't think much of it. Now I have a hunch that online friend is Jessica. You look upset. Your brother's back and you're giving me the cold shoulder. Did I offend you somehow? He pinched my cheek, then pulled an Oxford dictionary from his bag and handed it to me. Noah is still all sunshine at this age, nothing like the desolate, lovelorn man he'll become. I set the dictionary aside and asked instead, do you know who that online friend is? A guy or a girl? Not really sure, but they seem straightforward and easygoing. We get along great. From Noah I learned they'd met online, shared playlists, discussed movies, hobbies, talked about everything. On the second day of the holiday, Noah went to meet the so-called friend. I tailed him when Jessica showed up in a flashy leather jacket at the plaza. Even though I was prepared, I was still shocked, so Noah fell for Jessica this early. Adults think Jessica is improper, but to boys who admire her, she's the epitome of individuality, brash, unrestrained, a thorny wild rose, thrilling in the extreme. As Diego once said, something we boring good girls can't compare to. They chatted a long time, then went to the mall to ride the aerial go-karts. Noah looked genuinely happy. When they came out, I walked over with milk tea, smiling. Brother. Jessica froze, looked from Noah to me, studied me, then realized, Noah, Cecilia's your sister? I didn't even notice at first. Chewing gum. She gave a cold snort and looked me up and down with contempt. Then she slung an arm over Noah's shoulder and smiled. Since she's your sister, let me give you some advice. Tell her to stop being so nosy. If people don't like her, she shouldn't shamelessly play the homewrecker and ruin other people's relationships. It's disgusting. She never said Diego's name, but the disgust in her voice made it obvious. She assumed I'd complained to Diego's parents out of jealousy. Seeing Noah glance at me, puzzled, I curled my lips into a smile but dropped my voice a degree. Jessica, your family's loaded. You can afford to be willful and never worry about the future. Diego is different. He's his parents' hope. Because of you, he learned to lie, not come home at night, and talk back to elders. You think his parents don't notice? How ridiculous. As if you're the only smart one and everyone else is stupid. As for something I said must have hit her pride. Jessica clapped her hands over her ears and screamed for me to shut up. She looked so fragile it instantly triggered Noah's concern. He grabbed my shoulders, telling me to stop. I shook him off and kept going. And about your so-called love, you're taking yourself way too seriously. You treat Diego like treasure. In my eyes, he isn't even worth a blade of grass. I've never liked him. Don't assume everyone wants to take things from you. It's exhausting. The moment I finished, a slap cracked across my face, hard and sharp. My head snapped to the side. I didn't move. Noah, suddenly clear-headed, reached for my burning cheek, hands shaking. I dodged him. Cecilia, I didn't mean it. Things got out of hand. I didn't think. Come on, I'll take you to the hospital. When I stayed silent and didn't follow, Noah panicked. Silence hung in the air. Jessica squatted on the ground, hugging her head and crying. Noah was torn, at a loss. If you like her so much, then recognize her as your sister, emotional sister, real sister. I don't care. Noah, I don't want you anymore. I wiped my tears, pulled the dictionary he'd given me from my bag, threw it on the ground, and ran. Chapter 7. By the time Noah got Jessica home and returned, he found I'd already been taken to the hospital. Fortunately, the eardrum perforation from the slap wasn't severe. With care and medication, it would heal. Because of that slap, my father nearly threw Noah out of the house. After all, I'm the one he dotes on most. The day Noah returned to school, he came to the hospital to see me and said he shouldn't have hit me. Cecilia, I was wrong. Please forgive your brother. Just this once? I wanted to answer, but I remembered how, in my previous life, he left our parents and went abroad for Jessica, playing godfather to her twins and spoiling them. The thought turned my stomach. I shook my head, got up, and went to the restroom. Silent refusal, with the three-way mess exposed early. Noah cut contact with his online friend once he learned Jessica was the girl Diego liked. He bought me a pile of snacks to apologize. I wouldn't eat them and mailed them, under his online alias, to Jessica. Isn't that the adoration she craves? I stayed home a month to recover. When my ear finally healed, I returned to school. Senior year was at its tightest stretch. I had no time to track Diego and Jessica. I only heard they were publicly reprimanded at the flag-raising ceremony for dating early. News that Diego was dating a sophomore girl spread everywhere. I couldn't avoid hearing it. His mother was called to school multiple times. Jessica had no elders at home to rein her in and acted utterly unconcerned, infuriating yet unassailable. I only pitied Diego's parents. Cecilia, no wonder you don't walk with Diego anymore. Hey, how did it feel being the third wheel back then? My desk mate nudged me, eyes sparkling with gossip. Don't know, don't care, doesn't matter. Go ask the people involved. I pushed her away and kept doing practice problems. Right now I barely had time to drink water, let alone fuss over their sweetness. They're the male and female leads. Heaven will pamper them. They'll get into great universities even while dating. But cannon fodder like me? If I want what I want, I have to fight for it with everything I have. Chapter 8. Diego, come with me. I've got something for you. As soon as the bell rang for evening self-study, Jessica ran into the classroom with a gift box in her hands, all smiles, insisting Diego follow her out. After the two of them left, a few curious boys sneaked after them. When they came back much later, no matter how everyone pressed for details. They refused to say anything. On the bus afterward, perhaps deliberately, Jessica giggled and teased Diego in front of me, not stopping until his face turned bright red. "Grandma, please take this seat." I got up to offer my spot to an elderly woman nearby, only for Jessica to plop herself down first. She glanced at me and muttered, "What a hypocrite. Still pretending to be a little saint. Right back at you," I said calmly, seeing her about to start a fight. Diego quickly intervened. "Jessica, stop it. We're on a bus." At the sight of his frown, Jessica obediently stood up and helped the old lady sit down. I didn't want to watch them any longer, so I moved to the front of the bus. By accident, my eyes met Diego's. The moment our gazes locked, Jessica stepped in front of him, blocking me. I gave a short, amused laugh and turned toward the window, watching the city lights blur past. Knowing the college entrance exam was approaching, Jessica had toned things down a bit and stopped visiting the senior building. But word had it she was running with a few local gangs again, the very ones she would later offend. Soon, the day of my death from my previous life arrived, determined not to repeat the same fate. I refused to go out, even faking sickness when my mom asked me, just as before, to buy soy sauce. Later, I saw Diego from the window, walking unsteadily down the street. Something was wrong. By evening, news broke that Diego had been rushed to the hospital, Jessica at his side. A shattered right hand meant he could no longer take the college entrance exam. The school's top student, ruined overnight. Everyone was stunned. In the hospital hallway, Jessica squatted in a corner, eyes empty. When Diego's mother arrived and saw her, she stormed forward in fury. If her husband hadn't held her back, Jessica might have been struck. The story's path had changed. The one injured wasn't me this time, altering everything that followed. Seeing Diego pale and unconscious on the bed, Jessica no longer wore that indifferent expression from my past life. She gathered her so-called gang and swore revenge. No one knew how it ended, but Jessica, beaten and bruised, did not awaken to redemption as she once had. Instead, she grew even more reckless, haunting bars, learning to smoke, drinking hard, entangling herself with dangerous people. On exam day, I sat in the testing room and watched the morning sun break through after the rain. For the first time, I exhaled in peace. In this life, I wasn't the doomed, pitiful girl everyone mourned. My future was mine to shape, limitless and alive. Chapter 9. The 2 days of exams passed quickly, but the night after they ended, I fell suddenly, violently ill, a fever that burned through the whole night. No one knew I dreamed again of my previous life. In the dream, Jessica and Diego were camping outdoors with their twins. The children chirped, calling them mommy and daddy. Jessica looked radiant, no trace of the rebellious girl she once was. When she sneezed, Diego gently pulled her into his arms. They smiled at each other. The picture of love and warmth, a perfect family of 4, almost too perfect to disturb. Then, from the distance, a stranger approached, face hidden, dressed head to toe. Everything happened too fast. A deafening bang. Flames soared to the sky. The family of 4 and the stranger perished instantly in a man-made explosion. Perhaps that was the true ending of the previous life. And with that thought, I no longer felt bitterness. Good and evil always circle back. Everyone pays their price in the end. The fever raged for 3 days before I woke. When I opened my eyes, my parents were leaning over me, teary-eyed yet still scolding. "Told you not to kick the blanket at night. Look at you, sick in bed with an 4. Who do you blame now?" My mom poked my forehead in mock anger. "Ow, Dad, your wife's bullying me," I whined, clutching my head. "You little rascal." My father chuckled. "You deserve it." The hospital room filled with laughter. When I woke this time, it felt like a chain around my heart had finally broken. I could breathe easily, lighter than ever before. Some memories began to fade. I realized I could no longer clearly recall everything from the past life, and that was okay. Upon discharge, I stopped by Diego's room. He sat reading, right hand encased in thick plaster. Movement awkward. Because of Jessica, things between us were awkward too. He looked up at me but said nothing. I coughed and asked dryly, "You're going to repeat the year?" He nodded. His mood was strange. "Cecilia, how did you do?" Were the tests hard? I thought for a moment. Pretty good. If nothing goes wrong, I'll get into the university I've always wanted. I smiled brightly. A clean, elegant stab straight through his pride. A small repayment for the humiliation he once brought my parents. Now, in this life, I hadn't died. They could tangle themselves and love all they wanted, as long as they didn't drag anyone innocent down with them. Chapter 10. Because Diego's mother deliberately kept them apart. Diego hadn't seen Jessica for 2 days. Just before I left, he looked at me, clearly wanting to say something. I arched a brow and pretended not to notice. As I stepped out of the ward, Diego called after me, looking embarrassed. Cecilia, could you tell Jessica not to blame herself? I never held it against her. What I said that day was just out of anger. Before he could finish, I cut him off coldly. No. Seeing Noah coming from down the hall, I changed my tone and smiled. But there's someone who would be happy to pass along your message. He and Jessica have their own connection. Cecilia, Mom and Dad asked me to pick you up. Noah spoke to me as if nothing had ever happened. I nodded, pointed back at Diego, and said evenly, he needs a favor. You two talk, I'll wait at the hospital entrance. When Noah came out, his face was calm. I did wonder whether he would go find Jessica. At a red light, Noah asked, Cecilia, do you really hate Jessica? Can I ask why? It's not hate. I just can't like her. Some people's energies don't mesh. You can't coexist peacefully. I reclined in the passenger seat, eyes closed. When he didn't respond, I added, if you really like her and want her as my sister-in-law, then you'd better move out. Otherwise, the house will never know peace. I won't wrong myself for anyone. As for our parents, I'll take responsibility. You don't have to. He chuckled softly. You think too much for someone so young. Don't be ridiculous. She's Diego's girlfriend. We're just ordinary online friends. Oh, do whatever you want. It's not my business. He reached out by habit to ruffle my hair. I dodged. Noah sighed and said nothing more. The day the admission letters arrived, I ran into Diego and Jessica arguing downstairs. Jessica felt Diego hadn't had time for her lately and accused him of falling out of love. Seeing her being unreasonable, Diego pinched the bridge of his nose and frowned. Jessica, senior year is about to start. You really need to focus. I'll be repeating at another school, but we can still study together after classes. Didn't we agree to get into the same university? Jessica, like a wild horse off the reins, refused to be penned in. She waved a hand, not taking his words to heart. But school hasn't started yet. Let's go have fun first, okay? Once it does, I promise I'll study hard and stop going to bars. As she spoke, she grabbed Diego's hand and acted coy. I'd heard she was now singing regularly at a bar and was getting quite popular. No wonder Diego felt so insecure. Chapter 11. Because I didn't die, their fates shifted. Diego had to repeat a year. Jessica still frittered away her time. No awakening like in my previous life. As the day to register at school drew near, my parents grew reluctant to let me go. The morning before I left, my mom came into my room at dawn, hugged me tight, and burst into tears. She kept murmuring, it's so good, leaving me bewildered. Ack, help. Mom, you're squeezing too hard. I can't breathe. I may have worried you both a bit, but you raised me this far. You should at least recoup your costs. Better let me live well, I joked. At that, Mom finally stopped being sentimental and swatted my thigh. What nonsense. Up you get. What kind of girl sleeps in like this? Through my sleep-blurred eyes, I thought I saw her shoulders trembling. After she left, I glanced at the clock, only 6 a.m., and rolled over for more sleep. When I woke again, Mom was back to normal, though her eyes were still a little red. Here, sweetie, eat more. You've gotten so thin. Dad piled my bowl high and stared at me with shining eyes. Okay, thanks, Dad. Maybe because the parting was near, my eyes suddenly stung. Tears fell into my bowl, and I felt a little ridiculous. Neither of them went to work that day, saying they'd help pack so they could see me off tomorrow. That night, Mom came to sleep with me. She held me gently, patting my back as she did when I was little. In the blink of an eye, you've grown up. Your dad and I are just happy you're safe and well. Cecilia, I don't need you to be wildly successful. I just want you safe and happy. Remember, we will always love you." I wrapped my arms around her waist, tears sliding out silently, missing the off note buried in her words. "In my last life, I died too young, forcing them to bury their child. In this life, I still haven't had much time with them, and now I'm leaving again." I fell asleep in my mother's arms. The next morning, I was startled to see so many new white hairs at her temples. Because my university was in province, we arrived quickly after I'd made my bed and arranged my things. Mom kept fussing over me. We just agreed I'd come home whenever I could, but she made it feel like I was leaving forever. "Cecilia, be good. Don't get sick," she said, hugging me, voice choked. Watching them walk away, a scene from my previous life flashed through my mind. My nose stung, and I couldn't help calling out, "Mom, Dad." They didn't look back. I stood there and watched them grow smaller and smaller in the distance. Chapter 12. University life was vibrant and full of color. I was so busy with club activities every day that I rarely paid attention to Diego and Jessica's situation anymore. Later, my mother mentioned that because of Jessica, Diego's grades had dropped drastically. The two of them argued constantly, leaving Diego mentally exhausted and distracted. One had become a foolish student who repeated a year for love, while the other was still the notorious troublemaker everyone avoided. Their relationship was far from the romantic fantasy found in novels. When winter break came, I ran into Diego at the gate just as he was heading out. Our eyes met, surprisingly. He greeted me. After all, since he and Jessica had gotten together, we had become complete strangers. I nodded politely and was about to go inside when he called out, "Cecilia, I want to apologize for my behavior before. I never meant to lose you as a friend." He studied my face, then continued softly, "Do you still remember when we were kids?" I interrupted him before he could finish. "Diego, love needs to be mutual, and so does friendship. We can't go back." "I'm sorry, I went too far." He gave an awkward smile, trying to hide his embarrassment. If he could start reflecting on himself, that only meant his relationship with Jessica was falling apart. Maybe the world really did revolve around those two, because somehow, all through the break, I kept bumping into them while they were fighting. Jessica loved to play around, and there were always one or two new admirers chasing her. Naturally, Diego started to panic. One day, Jessica, dressed especially provocatively, blocked Diego's path. "He's just a friend. There's nothing going on between us. Why won't you believe me?" Diego looked straight at her and said seriously, "Jessica, let's break up." "No, I don't agree. You promised you'd never leave me." Jessica panicked, clutching Diego tightly, refusing to let go. I said, "It's over." His tone was final, lowering his gaze to hide the sorrow in his eyes. Diego spoke hoarsely. "My mom was right. We were never the same kind of people. You long for freedom. I want stability. I hate the places you go. We've fought countless times. You never really listen. I'm just too tired. Please, let me go." Jessica was proud, fiercely so. Hearing that, she stopped begging, slapped him hard across the face, and sneered, "Guess I was wrong about you. You're just like the rest." Before the new year even began, they had broken up completely. Their destinies diverged sharply from the path of my previous life. After the breakup, Diego threw himself into studying, finally easing his parents' worries. Jessica, being the illegitimate daughter of a wealthy family, had no sense of consequence. She skipped classes daily to hang out in bars. This time, Diego ended up becoming the top scorer in the city, regaining his old brilliance, once again the golden perfect child others envied. I had thought the male and female leads would somehow find their way back to each other. As stories always go, trials before reunion. But reality had other plans. Diego enrolled in a northern university thousands of miles away. Jessica, soon after, accepted someone else's confession. The two never crossed paths again. Chapter 13. In my senior year of university, I was torn about where to go after graduation. One day, while clearing my mind on a pedestrian bridge, I came across a Taoist priest offering fortune-telling services. As I passed by, he suddenly called out, "Miss, would you like me to read your fortune?" I smiled and shook my head, ready to walk away, when he said, You were meant to have a short life. Yet your fate has been altered. How fascinating. He stroked an invisible beard as if lost in thought. As someone who had been reborn, his words sent a chill down my spine. I felt as though he had seen straight through me. I approached his stall, pretending to be calm. I don't quite understand. Master, you must be mistaken, I said with a faint smile. Mistaken? You know very well if I am or not. He studied my palm and continued. Destiny is fixed, but fate is mutable. According to the original trajectory of your life, you were supposed to die at 18, but someone used a lifetime's worth of good karma to give you a chance to change your destiny. I'm guessing I'm not wrong, am I? My doubts vanished. In that moment, I finally understood my rebirth wasn't granted out of stubborn unwillingness to die. Of course, there are countless people who suffer in this world. Why should I alone be shown mercy by heaven? He sighed and patted my shoulder. When parents love their child, they plan for them long and deep. From birth onward, unceasingly treasure the little time left with your parents. Child. Then he packed up his things and left. Suddenly, I remembered the day before I started college. How strangely my parents had behaved. More than odd. It had felt final, almost as if they weren't my current parents, but the parents from my previous life, who had come just to see me one last time. That dream flashed through my mind. And in that instant, all the confusion I'd carried for years finally made sense. I smiled bitterly. So that's what it was. All of it was because of me. After graduating, I returned home and found a quiet, easy job. I spent my days clinging to my parents, and though they complained I was too dependent, I could tell they were secretly happy to have me around. Later, at 26, I married Sam, a senior from my university. We had dated for 3 years before naturally settling down together. After marriage, we bought a small apartment across from my parents' house. I liked knowing they were close enough that I could see them from my window. Over the years, Noah rarely came home. His business had failed, and he hadn't recovered. When I received Diego's wedding invitation, I was already 5 months pregnant. The bride wasn't Jessica. Rumor had it she was a business partner, a woman who had supported his career. At the wedding, the bride was poised, confident, and elegant. Diego looked at her with eyes full of love. Who would have thought? The Jessica he once loved so desperately had truly become his past. Businessmen value profit above all. Since Jessica never achieved the success she had in my previous life, her family never brought her back or trained her for the business. The family already had a new heir. There was no longer a place for her. A few short years later, no one knew what had become of Jessica. Some said that after graduation, she became the mistress of a crime boss, a woman kept on the wrong side of the tracks, walking a road with no return. Chapter 14. When my child turned 3, my parents' health began to decline. Just as that Taoist had said, their bodies started to weaken rapidly. Mom. I leaned against her shoulder, my throat tightening as tears welled up. If I hadn't been born, would your lives have been easier? Sometimes I feel like I came into this world just to make you suffer. Don't talk nonsense. She patted my back, her voice calm but firm. You're far more filial than your brother. Without you, your father and I might have died from the anger he caused us. We used to worry about you. She continued softly. But now that we see how kind Sam is to you, we can finally feel at ease. Just try to fix that temper of yours. Stop bullying him all the time. I couldn't help rolling my eyes. Mom. Sam's not some poor victim. He's smart. He just pretends to be pitiful in front of you. When did I ever bully him? She chuckled, ruffling my hair affectionately. All right, but don't say such depressing things again. Cecilia, your father and I have never regretted having you. We love you very much. Yeah, I know, I whispered. After that, I never brought up those gloomy thoughts again. Deep down, I had always known they truly loved me. Fortunately, companionship is the longest confession of love, and I was grateful that I could keep them company for as long as life allowed.